Honors Theorists, Portraits of Excellence. In this edition, we feature Dr. Rosemarie Rizzo Parse.
This home is where my roots are, and I feel, very strongly that I gained a lot in this environment. The house is very special because my father and grandfather built the foundation and so forth for that house. It has been built onto and modernized since my grandparents came to the United States, but it is very important because all of the important occasions in my life took place there. My grandparents on my father's side were born in Italy, and they came to the United States in, I guess it was 1906. They set up the homestead, the Rizzo homestead in Castle Shannon. And my grandfather was worked in with shoes. He was a shoe repair person. And when they moved into the community, then he began to be the lamplighter in the community. I didn't know my grandfather because he had died before my parents were married, but I did know my grandmother. I knew her very well because they lived right next door. She helped to raise my sister and myself and my brother, and she was a very loving, warm woman. My mother's parents were born in the United States, and they lived generally around the Pittsburgh area, and eventually moved to Castle Shannon. They were both very strong, very hard-working people. My grandfather was a coal miner, and my grandmother was a homemaker and a good bread maker, too. She could make bread. The community was a small community. As I was growing up in Castle Shannon, I was surrounded by important people, and those people were my parents and my family. My father is the oldest of 7 living brothers and sisters. He then, as a young child, picked up worked with his father to light the lamps in our small community. My father was very important in the community. He was known as an institution in Castle Shannon. He was a borough manager, and he initiated the volunteer fire department. My mother was very active in the Catholic Church. St. Anne's Church was the first church in that particular area. It was originally a coal mining town, and she was very active in the PTA and in fundraising, so that both my parents were forces in the community. My father in the political aspect in the fire department and so forth, and my mother in the church. My mother wasn't Italian. She was of German heritage, and it was strange at that time for an Italian fella to marry a German girl, but they struggled through that process with their parents and made a wonderful home and were wonderful parents. I had a wonderful childhood, right? It was very diverse. In the home, I, of course, learned to cook and clean, and I also had the privilege of learning to dance. I took dancing lessons for many years, and I took piano lessons, and I was exposed to the arts. I have a older sister and a younger brother. My sister's name is Nancy Jean Ferguel, and my brother's name is Frank Rizzo, Jr. He's vice president of compact metals for crucible steel. My older sister is a nurse, and she's in family practice. We were raised in a relatively strict Catholic family, so the important days like communion and confirmation were very important to us. And I went to a Catholic school, Catholic grade school, St. Anne's School, and then I moved on to, for high school, St. Francis Academy, and then to Duquesne University for college. Yes, I was a very good student in all the way through that process. I enjoyed school. I actually liked to study and liked to learn, and that was important in the family. My parents were stressed a great deal, the academic aspect of our lives. I went to Duquesne University for my bachelor's degree in nursing, and I was very happy in my undergraduate program. I learned a great deal. I had some fine teachers and carried that spirit that I learned early in my life of learning and wanting to learn more and wanting to create more and move on, so that when I did graduate from Duquesne, I moved on for my master's degree immediately. I worked some in between, but I did move to a master's program at the University of Pittsburgh. I met John Parse before I entered college, actually. It just seemed as though we were right for each other. I loved him early when I knew him, and then we separated for a time while I was, in college, and we dated each other and other people as well, and then he surfaced again in my life, and he's a very good person. He's very considerate and dependable and bright and articulate and has a wide variety of interests, and he compliments me greatly.
My wife is a very bright person, and they know that from her work. They probably know she's energetic also. I think what they don't know is that she works extremely hard, probably harder than anybody I've ever known, and that she's a very giving person. You can't tell that by reading the book or by reading the magazine that she publishes or her other books. Only I know a number of things about her, especially concerning what she has done as far as leadership is concerned in her profession. And when I say a profession, I mean not only the nursing profession specifically, but education generally. You must keep in mind that 25 or so years ago, the numbers of people graduating from baccalaureate schools of nursing were not great. Here in Pittsburgh, the major schools that exist today existed then, but they were graduating 10 or 15 students, as opposed to 60, 70, or 80 each now. So she was unusual in that respect and out front in that respect even then. When she graduated, she was offered a fellowship at the University of Pittsburgh. The dean and the major faculty advisors at Duquesne University, where she went to school, advised her to not take it. It was unheard of for young women to go into a master's program when they were just out of college. She took it anyhow. Graduated in 2 years and was the youngest woman in the United States at that time to have a master's degree in nursing. Went on for the PhD against everyone's advice. Why do you need a PhD? She was then teaching back at her alma mater at Duquesne University. Went on for the PhD and finished that in 7 years, going to night school without missing any work or any school. And she was the first faculty member at Duquesne University to have a PhD. She was the first graduate of Duquesne University's baccalaureate program to get a PhD. She became dean at Duquesne, and she was the first dean to have a PhD. In the larger arena of academia, she was elected president of the faculty senate at Duquesne before she became dean, and was reelected twice. She was the first woman to be president of the faculty senate, and the first person ever to be reelected twice, 3 terms total. The gist of her being out front and being a leader through all the years she's been practicing in her profession is that she's created a role model, a very important role model for a lot of young people. There are women today, young women in their 30s with PhDs in nursing, who would not have dreamed of going that far with their educations and with their careers had it not been for her. Some of them don't even know it. They don't know all the things I've just told you. They don't know that she was a role model that inspired them to do it. But like in every movement that requires leadership, she has been there.
Dr. Parse discussed her theory of man-living health with Dr. Jacqueline Fawcett at her home in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Rosemarie, I'd like to thank you so very much for agreeing to do this interview. I'm really looking forward to what you have to tell us today.
Well, I appreciate being asked to talk with you.
I'd like to start by asking you, what was your motivation for developing the theory of man-living health?
I think the ideas underpinning the theory really grew in me over time. I think they began long ago when I was a child. I had wonderful parents and a good, strong family, and my values for the human being and the dignity of being human grew from that time. So I think all through my educational process, I developed those values. But I can remember as an undergraduate student having this gnawing awareness that the medical model was limited as a guide for nursing practice. And I raised questions like, why do people not follow health teaching? And like, why do some people who do not get well? And so these ideas and questions perplexed me as I practiced and as I guided students. And so I was searching for a framework from which to practice nursing that connected with my values of the human-to-human relationships.
I'd like to ask what influenced you, what led you to the assumptions that underlie your theory?
I read widely, and I found that Martha Rogers' work was very consistent with my own views, particularly the area where she talked about the human-environment mutual process. And at the same time, I was reading in the literary works of Camus and Kafka and philosophers like Husserl and Kierkegaard and Heidegger and Merleau-Ponty and Sartre. And I began to put these ideas together to develop a unique perspective of nursing. And while my work is neither existential phenomenology nor Rogers, it's a new product that came out of the assumptions that I developed. The roots were in those particular areas.
Rosemarie, would you trace for us the development of your theory?
Well, I developed the assumptions from, as I mentioned, from the Rogerian framework and from the existential phenomenological thought of Heidegger, Sartre, and Merleau-Ponty. I looked at concepts within those frameworks and I joined them in a unique way to develop the assumptions that underpin the theory. And I think this all happened like over through the 70s. That's when I was really getting into this, to thinking in this way, and into, I just had a force and an idea that I wanted to see nursing carved out, the uniqueness of it in a particular way that would demonstrate the value for the meaning of lived experiences. And so I moved in that direction. The writing of a theory is different, I think, than the growing of it. You know, it grows in you in many different ways and comes out. And in the writings, my writings before Man Living Health, there were pieces and parts of it that sort of showed themselves in various things that I spoke about and wrote. And and in sitting down to put it together, to write it, so that someone else can appreciate it, then you put those ideas together in a slightly different way. Often people will critique my work and say, it's deductively, it has to be deductively derived, because if you look at the way the schemas are put together, you can see that. And I say, no, for me, induction and deduction, it's a process that you go through. It isn't like this is deductive, this is inductive. It's a process that one goes through in the development of ideas. So it comes through an inductive, deductive process, and the writing is merely, it's putting it down so that someone else can see it and learn it and understand it. But it's different growing that. That comes from lots of different ways. It's co-constituted by the world that the nurse lives in. It's actually the world that the theorist lives in developing and inventing and creating the theory.
How has your work influenced other people? For example, how does the theory help nurses to think about nursing?
Well, it's a whole different perspective than the traditional view of nursing. Its basic view about human beings is different. It's built on the assumption that human beings co-author health. It's built on the assumption that the human environment relationship is a mutual process, not cause-effect. So it's a whole different perspective, a whole different way of thinking about being human. This particular view calls out a different kind of practice and a different kind of research. If you believe the person is co-author of health, then the nurse is not the authority figure in relation to the changing of health. The person is. So it's a view of nursing that puts the focus on the person's own way of being and becoming.
Could you tell us more about the research methodology? How would the methodology allow you to look at the efficacy of an intervention that was congruent with the theory?
It's my belief that each mature discipline has its own research methodologies. And if it's a discipline that also has a practice connection or an art form with it, then the practice and the research methodologies must be congruent with the ontological base of the theory. So I developed a practice methodology and a research methodology that are consistent with the ontological base of man living health. The research methodology focuses on uncovering the meaning of lived experiences. It's qualitative in nature, and it is like other qualitative research methods in that it moves from the descriptions of participants up the levels of abstraction to the language of science. It's different in that the process of data gathering occurs through dialogical engagement. And this dialogical engagement happens as the researcher and the participant come together centered in discussing a lived experience of health. These dialogical engagements are then transcribed, and the researcher listens to and reads and studies the descriptions that were given by the participants and move those through the processes of extraction synthesis. And that moves through several levels of abstraction up to the theory.
So are you testing the theory with this research?
Expanding. I would call it expanding the theory.
How would you determine the efficacy of an intervention?
We have several evaluation studies in process now in the United States and Canada where we're evaluating the theory in practice. And what my colleagues and I do is there's a pre-descriptive evaluative process where the evaluator describes the situation as it is before there is any education about the Parse theory. And then there's an expert in Parse theory practice that works with the nurses and the persons in the agency, the families and clients, and then we gather process data so that we can see what's happening in terms of the changes in the nurses and the changes in the clients. And then at the end of a designated period, some have been 12 weeks, some 30 weeks, and some 6 months, then the independent evaluator then gathers data again related to certain questions, and then we begin to look at what is different. We look at differences in beliefs in nurses' beliefs, the practice of nursing, what's that like? We look at, invite clients to actually talk about the way that the nurse is with them and examine how that is different. So I would say we use an evaluation research process to evaluate the theory.
Do you foresee any refinements or modifications in your theory as a result of all these data that are being collected?
I think there may be some, but I'm not ready yet to make those revisions or changes until there's more evidence that demonstrates that there needs to be, any change. I think we'll have findings from 3 or 4 different evaluation studies soon, and the Man Living Health research methodology now has been used and published by several nurse scholars, and there are a number of other studies being carried out. So once these are completed, then I think I would like to take a look at all of the findings from these and then make some judgments about changes in the theory. But I wouldn't want to do that until I was certain that that there needed to be a change.
Would you tell us what you're doing now? What is the focus of your current work?
I'm engaged in a research study on laughter and health using the emerging Man Living Health research method, and utilizing videotape with that at the present time, because this is the first study with the videotape. So I'm in the process of the extraction synthesis of that material, that data, and as you know, I'm professor and coordinator of the Nursing Research Center at Hunter College, and I direct the doctoral task force there. So I'm involved in preparing and planning doctoral curriculum, and I'm preparing a book on the nursing practice with the practice methodology. And I edit Nursing Science Quarterly, so I'm very involved in developing nursing science, not only with my own work, but also with the various frameworks in nursing. I spend a lot of time in considering and working as editor of Nursing Science Quarterly.
What do you think is your most significant contribution to nursing?
Well, I think the value of my contributions will be decided by the generations of nurses whose practice is guided by Parse's theory and the people who experience that practice. I think the value will be decided by them. I think my work is an invitation. I see it as an invitation to nurses to think about nursing in a different way, to look at human beings and value them as co-author of health. I think the concern for the meaning of lived experiences is very important in the evolution of nursing science. And the invitation goes beyond that, to think and to take the ideas and to move them on to another generation of thought and another generation of nursing science.
How does the theory influence curriculum? For those who accept the invitation, how can it help them in their teaching?
I believe that the curriculum would focus on a teacher-student relationship that would also reflect a concern for the person of the student, and the administrator-nurse interrelationship would also demonstrate that particular value. I think in order to develop this as a practice of nursing, the educational program would have to be quite different than it is for traditional nursing. It might even be at a graduate level, the first professional degree. I believe that a nurse practicing the man-living health theory must have a very strong liberal arts and science base. In order to be in the interrelationship that is described in the practice methodology, where the nurse is truly present to the person, that true presence requires a level of maturity in the individual and calls them to be with the other in a very special way. And that special way is to value the other and set aside my particular values, or the nurse's particular values about health, and to work with the person as they move through changing health patterns. So I think an educational program for that kind of nurse would be very different. It would not follow the traditional medical model that's in operation today in most of our nursing programs.
Earlier we talked about what you think your contributions to nursing are. Now could you tell us what has given you the most satisfaction in your nursing career?
Well, I love all that I do, but I think something that gives me a great deal of satisfaction is the opportunity to be with others to co-constitute the stretching of potentials among scholars. And it's not just the potentials of others, but it's also my own. And that opportunity to be with others, to foster and forward ideas, to change and stretch the discipline of nursing science. That's what I do, and that's what I like to do.
If you had a crystal ball, what would you see for the future? What are your long-range plans?
Crystal ball. What I see there is myself and others growing and changing and creating and moving nursing science to a place where it is not yet. I would like to have a hand in continuing to expand the theory through practice and research, and to help to guide others in that process. And most important, I want to keep growing myself. I want to move from this horizon to a next one, to a next one. I think I'll always be looking on to the next horizon.
Rosemarie, I'd like to thank you again very, very much for agreeing to do this interview. It has been just delightful to talk to you today.
I appreciate being invited to share my thoughts and my ideas. Thank you.
Rosemarie was my first teacher in Foundations of Nursing, and since that time I've known her as a mentor and also as a friend. Rosemarie talked about nursing as taking care of people. So nurses weren't there to take care of diseases or to identify problems that people had and to take care of those problems or focus on the problems. Nurses were there to know about the people and to go to the person and understand their experience at that time. And she taught even from the very beginning. She didn't teach the disease processes. At that time, We learned nursing based on the diseases and the clinical problems and the signs and symptoms. And at the very end, there was this little piece called Nursing Implications. Well, Rosemarie started from the very beginning looking at the person. She is a visionary. She's a person that is out there on the edge of nursing and pushing the frontiers forward. And I think that's an uncomfortable position sometimes to be in. But living on that edge and pushing the frontiers of the science forward is something that is that we need in nursing. We need for our scientific growth and our development.
I think that I'm more involved in the philosophical and the idea of communicating with the universe and being grounded and thinking in terms of that. Tai Chi is, yes, it's an oriental martial art, actually, that focuses on centering and grounding and calmness and oneness with the universe. And I write about that in my work, and I try to live that way as well. It's a philosophical perspective. My husband and I, John and I, don't have any children, but we do really have 8 children because I have four nieces and 4 nephews. And my sister is married to Joseph Ferguel, and they have 5 wonderful children between the ages of 33 and 17. And my brother is married to Gloria Steenson, Rizzo, and they have 3 wonderful sons. They'll carry on the Rizzo name. I don't have a lot of time to do it with my present lifestyle, but that's where you'll find me, with family and certainly the chief cook.